What's up everyone, it's Mel from Fortin Amps, and in this video we're dialing in the Tempest with the JCM2000. Alright, so in last week's video we dialed in and went over the tone that I got with the Tempest and the JCM2000. I was pretty stoked on it, but I struggled a little bit with the low end and the clarity, just specifically with the amp and the pedal, just because I feel like the amp was a little bit brighter than I was used to, and I was playing in a much higher tuning, which means it really didn't balance out as much as it usually did when I was using a Mesa or a 5150. So in this video, I'm gonna be dialing in this thing and then going over the tone from start to finish with you guys in real time. So enough talk, let's jump into dialing it in. Alright, so I'm here at the setup with my FGN Iliad, outfitted with Fishman pickups going into the Tempest and then into the JCM200, all gated by the Zool Plus. Then mic'd up in my vocal booth with my Mesa oversized 412, mic'd up with an SM7B going straight into the Apollo. So right now I've dialed in something similar to the tone that I had in the demo from last week, and it sounds something like this. Alright, with something relatively close to that tone that I had, let's dial everything to 12 o'clock, reset the amp, and let me break down how I got here. Alright, so starting with the amp at 12 o'clock, everything sounds like this. I feel like the Fishmans do a lot of work and push this amp really nicely. I have it on the classic gain structure. Usually I like to push the classic gain structure or a low gain structure and push it with an overdrive, just so I'm getting half amp and half overdrive versus just trying to clear up an ultra gain setting or a high gain setting in an amp, because I feel like I get more value or character from the overdrive than I do from the amp. When I use the ultra gain setting, it feels a little thinner. I feel like I don't get that body in just because everything gets super compressed when you push it in a high gain setting. So what I'm going to tend to do from here is just go with the classic gain setting and listen for that low end chug. So now that I feel that that is full bodied, I'm going to go and mess around with the settings a bit, try to get some nice fullness. And then really listen for that pick attack. For the high gain, heavy metal sound, I like to keep my treble somewhere fairly high but not harsh. So I'm listening for that scrape, I'm listening for that attack, and then I'm gonna dial that up and just kind of hear until the amp doesn't get too thin. The thing that I found interesting is that the Fishmans really put a lot of punch and have a really compressed characteristic coming out of the pickups themselves. So I don't really have a ton of dynamic characteristics as I would when I use passive pickups, which is great for consistent sounding tone coming out of the guitar. So now that I've rolled the bass up and I've gotten the treble where I want it, I noodle around and I mess around with the mid section. Too low and it sounds scooped, and too high and it gives me too much harshness. So I try to dial it back just a tad, but not too much so that it sounds scooped. As soon as I dialing it all the way back and dialing it all the way up gives me an idea of where that knob usually tends to modify the sound. So what I tend to do is I'll dial it back until I feel like I'm missing something. And then when I'm missing something, I'll dial it back up a tad. And the reason I do that specifically with the middle knob is because that frequency and that characteristic tends to get a little harsh over a period of time for a lot of listeners. So I'll try to keep it not too harsh unless I'm playing leads. You'll notice that leads translate a little bit better if you have more mids just because they're more pokey. And since they're leads, you want them to stick out. So You might want to raise that a little bit if you're doing a little bit more lead work or riffing, but if you're going for chugs and full bodied, I'd lower the midsection a lot. You're going to get that pick attack translating a lot harsher. So you can hear here. You can tell a lot more pick attack. And the thing with the JCM, it's bright. It's really hard to get a ton of full body low end, especially if you don't have the right speaker setup, if you're not pushing the amp loud enough, or if you're playing a certain style of playing that doesn't translate for this type of amp. And then with the deep knob, you can hear that sustain is coming from there. So I tend to push in the deep button. The tone shift button, I'm not particularly fond of in the JCM. Here's what it sounds like. And then in high gain settings, it sounds really thrashy. It gives you that really, really scoop tone, which is cool for that era of music, but I think that's not something we're looking for in a modern tone. So the ultra gain setting sounds pretty dope, but it doesn't feel as full-bodied and as round as I'd want it to. So I'm going to go with that classic setting again. And now I feel like this is a cool starting point to then push in the overdrive. So now that that's there, let me turn on the Tempest and see what it sounds like. So immediately upon engaging the Tempest, I noticed that it introduced a lot of high end. Because everything's at 12, I've lost a good bit of low end and a good bit of high end, depending on the amp. In this case, it nuked a bunch of the low end, especially in combination with the Fishman pickups. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm actually going to open these up. Push these out and open all the way. So now that I've opened up that low pass and high pass, you can hear that a lot of the body is returned to the amp. That's super cool because now I know that I have a ton of control. So what I'm going to do, because I do feel like the tone is muddy, I'm going to dial back this drive and I'm going to dial back this level. Not enough gain, so I'm going to bring that level back up to 12. I'm going to mess around with this gain knob too. I'm actually going to push that level a bit more because I want the gain to be pushed. So now it's breaking up quite nicely, but it does feel a little harsh, so I'm going to dial this back. And what I tend to do with the Tempest is a cool rule of thumb for me personally is that low end is going to dictate how much mud I want to remove from my guitar tone. And the low pass, or this high, to me it's the high end control, will remove how much harshness. And you can tell by dialing it back, it immediately cuts that out. Cool, so it still feels a bit muddy, so I'm gonna lower this, or raise this rather. Now it feels pretty clear. It's got some nice bite, it's got some nice attack. I'm going to mess around with the presence to see if I can dial back that harshness. And I might push the level, actually I'm going to push the gain up here a little more. All right, so with that tone, I'm pretty happy with that. It sounds nice, bitey, has a ton of attack, but it doesn't sound too harsh. I might dial back in the treble. But with that being said, I think that's pretty close to what I had before and breaks down a lot of my rationale. I should hear it in context. Usually what I do is I'll dial back the bass depending on the guitar tone in the mix with another bass guitar, and I might play with the middle depending on the riff. But let's check this out with and without the Tempest. So as you can tell, the Tempest does a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the gain structure. Trying it on the ultra gain setting. Even though I raise it up, it feels like the tone is harsher and thinner. It's a cool lead tone nonetheless, but I still feel like I prefer the green channel. Alright, so there you have it. That's the tone that I dialed in with the JCM2000 with the Tempest. I hope you guys dig it, and here's the demo in a full mix. There you have it, the tone that I got with the JCM2000 and the Tempest. If you guys didn't check out last week's video where I went over this tone isolated and in a full mix in a little bit more detail, talking about the workflow, the process, and my overall thoughts on this matchup, please check out the video from last week. And if you guys have any feedback and tips on how you would dial this in for a modern metal tone, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button, ring the bell for notifications, and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Also, in the comment section, other than letting me know how you would dial this amp pedal matchup, please let me know what other amps we should try out with the Tempest. We're going to be trying to go through all of them, as many as we can for you all, please. With all that being said, I hope you guys dug this tone. My name is Mel from Fortin Amps, and I'll catch you on the next one.